Hello, everybody. This is Nanette Kennedy with Humanities Team, and it is July 25th, and we are reading The Only Thing That Matters by Neale Walsch. And today, Mary's going to read for us because Linda had something come up. So if you want to get us all straightened out to where we are so people listening to the recording can know, that'd be great.
Okie dokie. So today we are on page 80, chapter 16, Eliminating Life's Complexity. Now there is something very important you must know and understand, or this part of your exploration could become very discouraging. An old human view and a traditional religious view explored in the book What God Wants is that God's desire is for suffering to be used by human beings to better themselves and to purify their soul. Suffering is good. It earns credits or points in God's mind, especially if it's endured silently and maybe even offered up to God. Suffering is a necessary part of human growth and learning, and is, more importantly, a means by which people may be redeemed in the eyes of God. Indeed, one whole religion is built on this belief, asserting that all beings have been saved by the suffering of one being who died for the sins of the rest. This one being paid the debt said to be owed to God for humanity's weakness and wickedness. According to this doctrine, God has been hurt by the weakness and wickedness of humanity, and in order to set things straight, someone has to suffer. Otherwise, God and humanity could not be reconciled. Thus, suffering was established as a redemptive experience. With regard to the suffering of human beings due to natural causes, it's not to be shortened by death under any circumstances that are not also natural. The suffering of animals may be mercifully ended before natural death, but not the suffering of people. It's God and God alone who determines when human suffering shall end. One result of this teaching, human beings have endured unimaginable suffering over extended periods in order to do God's will and not incur God's wrath in the afterlife. Millions of people feel that even if a person is very, very old and is suffering very, very much, lingering on the verge of death but not dying, experiencing interminable pain instead, that person must endure whatever life is bringing them. Humanity has actually created civil law declaring that people have no right to end their own suffering, nor may they assist others in ending theirs. However anguishing it may be, however otherwise hopeless a life may have become, the suffering must go on. This is, the Orthodox view tells us, what God wants. Now, in what some like to think of as an enlightened age, many people, but by no means all, have rejected these notions. However, a large number have replaced them with new thoughts that are not much better, suggesting that humanity's innate desire to experience divinity can only be satisfied by suffering through what humanity experiences to be the opposite of divinity. In fact, after reading the item near the closing of the previous chapter right here, one could imagine a person becoming quite angry, saying, "Are you telling me that if God wants to experience the divine quality called patience, I have to suffer through everything that creates that opportunity? Are you saying that I have to keep suffering all the difficult and trying conditions in my life simply so that God can know itself? Excuse me, but no thanks." So before you go too far down that road, this official notice, please. This note from the front office. God is not asking you to be a surrogate sufferer. That is very important to hold in consciousness. lest you find yourself embracing the notion that you are experiencing struggling and suffering as a response to God's desire to experience divinity. If you experience struggle and suffering, it is not because you have responded to God's desire, but because you have forgotten it. God's greatest desire is to experience divinity in its fullest form. That fullest form does not include struggle and suffering. You are not required to experience negativity in any form in order for God to experience divinity in every form. The emotions that produce struggle and suffering are products of the human mind. God does not label any condition bad or become aggravated or offended or frustrated because a particular circumstance has arisen. God understands that everything arising is an invitation for divinity to express itself at its next highest level. You may understand this too at a theoretical level. Yet even though you are a divine being, you are not all that God is. And so, of course, it is understandable that while God does not experience suffering, you may. A drop of the ocean is water for sure, but it is not the ocean. Yet compared to a submolecular particle, a drop of water might as well be the ocean, such as its relative size and power as it rolls, such is its relative size and power as it rolls through a submolecular particle field. And as the drop of water is to the ocean, so are you to God. This means that you have divine power proportionate to your size. And that means that you possess divine power proportionate to your problems. This may be the most important information you will ever receive. The problems that each of us face every day, considered within the entire contextual field in which God exists, are surely minuscule. Indeed, within that context, they are not problems at all, but merely conditions. Yet, for every one of us, our biggest problems feel understandably and appropriately very large. They are, after all, being encountered by us. They are not being encountered by God. Or are they? What if it were God who was encountering these conditions through us? If God lives in us, that would be true. And God does live within us, so it is true. The message here is that we are larger than we think, and our problems are smaller in relationship to us than we imagine. Mystics and sages have said for ages that life never sends us a problem too large for us to handle. They are right, and groups of us working together have enough power to overcome every problem that groups of us have created. All we have to do is decide to. And so, in our own personal space and in the environment collectively created by the lot of us, we are, in a sense, deities, even as a drop of water is an ocean in the space of a submolecular particle. The immense power that is yours has to do with the tools you have been given with which to create the experiences of your life. With these tools, you can end suffering in your personal life forever and eliminate struggle from your encounters. These two tools are shared in part 3 of this book, where we look at how the only thing that matters may be applied in a practical way every day. A soul knowing. You possess divine power proportionate to your problems. For now, allow yourself to know that your soul experiences all of life's moments entirely different from the way your mind experiences them. So you will not find these powerful tools in your mind's array of resources, at least not at first, not until you have trained your mind to include your soul in your consideration of everything that is happening around you. Then your mind can utilize these tools in the face of any exterior circumstance, past or present, that invites your next demonstration of divinity. Now, once again, let it be said that moving into such a demonstration is not required. You do not have to do this. It is not demanded of you. You can choose for the expression and the experiencing of divinity to be the purpose of any given moment in your life, or not, as you wish. Nothing bad will happen to you at the end of your present life on earth if you do not. The choice is entirely yours. Many of the planet's theologies describe this choice as free will. There is a reason that nothing bad will happen to you if you do not choose to express divinity in your life, a reason that most of Earth's theologies reject. The reason is that you cannot fail to express divinity, no matter what you do. Now, remember when you were invited here to have patience? Please exercise this patience once again. We are venturing further into this spiritual complexity now, because understanding this can help you eliminate much of the complexity of human life. Having said that, be advised that what you are about to read may be the single most difficult concept about life and God that humanity has ever been invited to embrace. The only way that a human being could fail to express divinity would be for a human thought, word, or action to be other than divine. And such a thing is impossible. It is life's great impossibility. In physical life, there are forms of divinity, some complete, some incomplete, some pure, some distorted. But there is no such thing as an absence of divinity. For there to be an absolute absence of divinity, life on earth would have to be separate from or other than that which is divine. Yet physical life is not separate from the divine, nor can it be, since it is in its entirety an expression of the divine. God therefore sees nothing that is not divine, even if it appears in distorted form. In physical life, which is experienced in relative terms, there is no such thing as an absence of divinity, but there are degrees of it. It might help you to think of this as degrees of purity. Imagine placing food coloring one drop at a time into a large pitcher of the purest water from the clearest mountain stream. Because a drop of food coloring has been placed into the water, does not mean that the pitcher does not contain mountain water. It means that the mountain water is now not quite pure. The more drops of coloring you place in the water, the less pure the water that fills the pitcher will be, but it will still and always be mountain water. The more thoughts you hold that are limited to the mind's experience, rather than including the soul's awareness, the less pure will be the energy that fills your being. Yet that energy will still and always be the essence of the divine. Or think of a mirror in a frame that has been slightly twisted to produce a distorted reflection, as in a carnival funhouse. The image is distorted to the degree that the reflecting surface has been warped, but the being in the mirror is still and will always be you. Your image can be distorted, but it cannot be anything but your image distorted. Now let's see if we can come up with an example that places this concept on the ground in everyday life. Once again, let's use a common experience, fear. All fear and that which derives from it, such as anger, hatred, and violence, is a distorted form of love. That's an important statement, and you should read it again. So I'm going to read it again. All fear and that which derives from it, such as anger, hatred, and violence, is a distorted form of love. If you think about it, you will realize that if a person loved nothing, that person would be totally free of fear, anger, hatred, or violence, because there would be no need for such emotions to arise, nor the actions that proceed from them. Exploring this further, we see that fear, anger, hatred, and violence are expressions of the loss or the anticipated loss of something which is loved, or of never having to begin with something which is loved. If there is no love of anything, there is no sense of loss or deprivation, and therefore no negative emotion of any kind attached to the absence of anything. Do you see this? Because humans, in their limited perspective, misunderstand how to express their love, they behave in ways that appear to be the opposite of love, but which are, in fact, distorted wailings of love. All expressions of anger and fear, hatred and violence are distorted wailings of love. Remember that for the rest of your life. Remember that. The person who grasps this grasps at the edges of divinity. Where divinity expresses, forgiveness is never necessary, for it is rendered pointless in the presence of absolute understanding, which is, of course, what divinity is. This was the whole point of the biblical story of Jesus forgiving the thief on the cross next to him. Jesus, in his absolute understanding, recognized that the thief acted out of his love for something when he stole, and simply expressed that love in a distorted form. And of course, there was no place other than heaven for the thief to go in any case, precisely because God perfectly understands everyone and everything. God has no need to create a place of eternal damnation, indescribable suffering, unspeakable torment, and unending torture. Heaven is all there is, and that paradise includes life on earth. If we do not experience life on earth as a paradise, it is because we have not yet understood the true purpose of life itself, or how to manifest it in and through our daily lives. Yet evolution is the process by which all sentient beings come to that understanding, and evolution will not be denied. Evolution's extraordinary insight is that the worst crimes and behaviors of humans will never be forgiven by God. Never. Not because God refuses to forgive, but because absolution is not necessary, since all human action is based at its root in love, however confused, mistaken, or distorted its expression. A soul knowing, all fear is but a distorted form of love. As Conversations with God puts it, no one does anything inappropriate given their model of the world. The healing message of that dialogue is simple. Evolution is not a sin, and God does not punish confusion. End of chapter.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Well, does anybody, well, there's a couple things I'm going to say first and then we can go. I know, Mary, that you were raised Catholic as I was. My parents were thankfully mostly very mystical Catholics. They didn't buy into a lot of the stuff that the church proposed. And I can remember hearing my dad say, the priest is not God. But I can remember very clearly as a child, and whether it was I had a stomach ache or whether I was having a disagreement with a friend, or whatever the problem might be, and if I were complaining about it, my mother would say, you know what you need to do? You need to give up your suffering for all the suffering souls in purgatory. And because I thought it was such a sad thing, there was such a place as purgatory, and that even little babies could be there, I would try to offer up my suffering and keep my mouth shut about whatever I was complaining about. In retrospect, I think, and I don't think my mother meant this to be this way, but it put me in a really good habit of not voicing what was troublesome to me. And after many years of counseling, I realized it's okay to say, you know, I'm really sad that my best friend is mad at me, or I'm really heartbroken that my dad died, or, you know, whatever the circumstance. And where it says a soul knowing all fear is but a distorted form of love, I think that fear, because I would, as you were reading, I was trying to make sense of that. And I think everybody here is familiar with this event that we had in the last several months, which was the trial of the man that killed George Floyd. He's a policeman. And if you're not, is there anybody not familiar with it? I was thinking of the man who killed him. And I was trying to figure out how fear from George Floyd was this distorted form of love. And that made sense to me, because George Floyd was fearful of just losing his life because he loved life. Now, what I was trying to figure out, on the other hand, was the guy that ended up killing George Floyd was acting out of some sort of fear, but I don't know what the love part would be. But anyway, that's my ideas so far. Anybody can add, subtract, or come up with something new.
I just messaged Mirko because he raised his hand that he didn't know after you asked, so to explain the situation. And it's very hard in situations like that to untangle, you know, what I think those cops, particularly the one who did the act, what they love is their way of life. And it brings up the whole, you know, notion of white body supremacy, like, and power maybe, but I don't know, that's a distortion of love for sure. But to me, it's like, because it's bigger than George Floyd, we all know that. It's this irrational fear that white people often have of Black people who are not an immediate source of danger, right? White people often look at Black people and feel a threat where there is none. You know, like the woman in the park who called the cops on the guy who told her, your dog is supposed to be on a leash. It's like he was not threatening her except to put her dog on a leash. And she calls, you know, it's like a thing that happens all the time. And it, to me, it's like holding on to this way of life that we were born into, that we didn't question, and we don't want to let it go. That's what it's love for a way of life that we don't want to let go of. That's what I think. I'll pause there if anyone else has anything to say, but then I want to go on to a different thing that I thought of.
Okay.
Reading. Anyone else have anything on that? Does that make sense to you, Nanette?
Yes.
Go. Who wanted to say something?
Okay, may I? Okay, go on.
I thought you wanted to say something.
Okay.
Yeah, I also
sorry.
thought somebody else. Okay, but
Okay.
okay,
I want.
okay, then I go on. Okay, you talked about it's something like we get where we grow up. Also, we get conditioned, and we are not aware of our conditioning, and in a lot of moments. And I also think I last time was on a talk where somebody just said, okay, everybody is a racist. And then I just thought for myself, without doing anything, oh, it's a heavy statement. But then I was listening to his explanation, and then I just thought, yes, everybody is a racist because we are growing up. It's not because I choose to be a racist. It's because we are conditioned in this society, and then we have to influence, or we have to really say, okay, I have to look, or have to clearly see what is the conditioning, and then to work on this conditioning, to decondition ourselves. And I think, but I think it's a lot of, we are not aware of many of these actions, and this makes this also, I think it's also then part of suffering. We create sometimes this suffering through this, through our unknowing, or somehow like this.
Yeah, it's deeply internalized. And, you know, once we are aware of that, we just have to be open to looking at it when it rears its head in our lives, you know. I think Am wanted to say something, and Darby, and then Mirko has his hand raised too. So.
Okay. Anne, you want to go ahead first?
Okay. It's just that I don't know if I'm saying anything different, but
Who is now?
I said with racial things, I'm always a bit shocked with racial things, because people I like people, I like them all.
Yeah.
And then they come out with when I do my work, I go from what, you know, maybe being with some people who are like immigrants to England, and of course I'm also Irish, so I don't belong in England. I've come from a different country, but and I always feel enriched by the diversity of people. I feel enriched by it. But then maybe if I always lived here and it was all English, and they had at one time you know, a lot of power, and they had it in a particular way. When different people mix up, everything changes, doesn't it? Things change. Yeah. So we're kind of frightened of change, and then I guess it goes on from there, doesn't it? So it surprises me that in some of the kindest hearts of people, there's a extreme resentment to immigrant, you know, anybody coming into the country. I've experienced it, and even experienced it for myself also, but I'm a white person. So if if you've got in any bit of brown or black in you, you've got a much bigger challenge. I mean, obviously I didn't have much of a challenge. It's just people knew I was Irish. They didn't like it. But anyway, there we are.
Thank you.
Yes,
Um,
I would like to say something about from our experience here in Croatia. We were in former Yugoslavia 30 years ago, and was, you know about this, was war 30 years ago between Croatia, Serbian people, and also Muslims in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And it's very hard to understand this because we Croatian and Serbian people, now we are different states, but we speak almost the same language, quite little difference. It's not the same language, but it's almost the same language. Some words are different. And it's very hard to understand because 30 years after this war, there is also now hate between these people, and maybe because they were killed on the one and the another side. But it's very hard to understand quite the same, not the same, but quite the same, and so much hate between these people. Maybe it's easier to understand hate or do not love another race, black people, but how brotherhood people, nations, and so much negative emotions between this. It's very hard to understand because when was finished the World War II, 45, some 10, 15 years after came the tourists from Germany, all these countries, Italy, which were on the other side, and between Croatia and Serbia, not. It's very hard to understand. Similar people and so much not to love each other. Normally, we love normal people, but the situation is not resolved until now. Oh,
Thank you.
Yeah, tribalism. I call it tribalism. That's what it is. And I was going to say it's not only racial, because even, you know, here I'm half Italian. When the Italians came here and the Irish, when they came here, they were like, you know, not fully white in the eyes of people. Mirko, did you have something you wanted to share? You've been waiting a while, I think.
Yes.
My point of view is, and also my question for all of you is, we have just read that hatred, excuse me for my English, hatred, anger, and violence are distorted expression forms to expressing love. But I would also add that also ignoring that another person is a form of violence, because I make simple examples. When a client in work don't pay you for your work, or don't respond to you for searching to be paid, you have a big problem. When the client become 2 or 3, you have 3 big problems. Or when, or in a relationship, when you have a relationship with another person, and suddenly this person doesn't respond to you anymore, you have a problem, because in both cases they are ignoring you, and in a way they are similar to the policeman that was killing this man. this black man because they know that you are, in a way, you are dying, but they are ignoring you. So I was wondering, and I like to ask you, what do you think that a person that is ignoring you, what this person is loving? I think that person is loving some, I don't know what, a form of power in you, a form of I live many cases because also in my work in these days of person that don't want to confront, to meet you. I think, and I close my intervention, suggesting that we don't, we misunderstood who we are, because we think we are, as Neale often say that we think we are our body or our mind, our possessions. We think that, as you said in the last meeting, we are here to get the girl, get the car, etc. But we are not remembering that we are really all one. And so what I do to you, in a certain way, I am doing to me. But for me, I understand this, but I see that, as the book say at the beginning, 98% of people probably don't see this. So in my life, I have to be honest. I have ignored some people sometimes because I feel that this was the best way to handle a situation, to let go, don't try to fix the situation. Today that I'm living in some way the same situation, in a form I am living the other part that I have done. So I have to say that I I really, as the chapter said, I am in a place where I don't forgive the other person, but I understand that for them, also for the policeman, this was the best way to handle the situation, because they really don't know the best way to handle this. They really don't know who they are. I think this is. I would like to know your asking to my point of ignoring people, not only hate, not only kill, but also ignoring. And another one is a form of killing, of violence for me. This
I'll take that. And then as soon as I do that, Romy, I see that you've got your hand up. I think ignoring sometimes is a protection of ourselves. Is that if you ignore something, it's like putting up a shield, at least for me. And I think there was absolute ignoring in the example that was posed about the man that killed George Floyd. I think he absolutely ignored every human instinct. And for what reason, but some sort of fear, in my opinion, plays a role in that. And Well, that's about all I can say to that. Roman, do you want to go next?
I also often think about it's for me, it's that what Mirko said, it's not reacting or not, how do you say, ignoring, it's just not answering to something. I think it's sometimes it's for me, it's not ignoring, and I see it now. I have seen it in another way earlier in my life, but now I see it sometimes not. I also see it as a protection, because out of a moment, I don't know. I just know that I haven't got a clue, or I know that it needs some time for me to process. And so I'm not, then I say for me, the safest and the best in this moment is to pause. And I think to pause is for me not ignoring, it's for me just to give a space. And sometimes I have not to, I think I don't like to react. I just like to act. And sometimes I'm acting later on, some days or weeks, or I don't know why, when the time is right. And I think for me, it's just important on an energy level that I can clear the situation for myself. And so often it's also cleared then sometimes I get even other information from these people that they also find a way to go with the situation without clutching on each other or hurting each other, because they understood in the meantime to find their own way to get the solution, to the solution. I'm over. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Mary, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, Romy, and I think that not everybody is as sort of conscious and aware when they are ignoring someone. You're like taking a pause. You're not ignoring, you're processing and stuff. And sometimes people are really more like ignoring, like Marco's talking about. Mirko. And I have been on the receiving end of some serious ignoring in a relationship one time. And it was a form of violence. It really was. We were living in the same house. He didn't talk to me for 2 weeks because he thought I did something that I didn't do and he didn't like it. And, you know, to me, it's like it was sort of prioritizing. I was thinking more about when I ignore things, and I not so much that experience, but yes, it can be a form of violence. And when I ignore things in a non-conscious sort of way, it's about prioritizing my own comfort, right? I don't want to have a conflict. I don't want to have to deal with something unpleasant. So it's an ego thing. And I think that does go back to the George Floyd thing, right? It's an ego thing. We just want to like be here in our little bubble, and we don't want to have to deal with something that doesn't go with our vision and version and have to deal with complications. That was a thought that I had. The other thing I wanted to talk about was this whole notion of distorted love. Like we're all divinity, but sometimes it's really distorted. What that made me think of, Nanette, possibly because of our Catholic upbringing, was Lucifer, the devil, right? What was he? God's most beautiful angel. So this beautiful expression of divinity who like got seriously distorted. And then, you know, and then now what is he? He's like the devil and this whole big, you know, epitome of evil. And what is that but distorted love? That was what came to me during that reading, and I just wanted to share that. So now I'm complete. Thank you.
That's a very good point. And I could go on, but I'm going to let, I think, Romy, did you have your hand up again?
Yeah, I did.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just, while Mary was talking, I just came in my mind. I never tried it out. How would it be when I never tried it out, but would it be when you're in a discussion or whatever, and you don't like to answer, or we can say it from both sides, and you don't like to answer, or you just need what I just thought some time, and then perhaps somebody and I would write to the person, hey, I take a pause or I pause as an answer. I think if it would be reverse, and somebody would write me, Romy, right now I am pausing, then I would say, okay, great, thanks for the information. I think it would even relieve, and it would take out the power, and it would be a way towards, I think, working for peace and becoming peaceful could be, for me, it could feel like that. Yeah, it could be a way. I don't know. I'm just curious what you experience about this subject, or if you ever tried it or whatever. Yeah, I'm complete.
I think that this is a really important topic, and I think it's something we need to discuss again next week, because I'm sitting here thinking about all the times people have ignored people. And I think if we go back to the George Floyd thing, and I'm glad I can't remember the other guy's name, but the guy that had his knee in his back was ignoring. And if what we just read is true, it's fear. And maybe it's the fear that he's not doing, that he's not good at his job, let's say.
Well, he was given all those warnings, Derek Chauvin. He was given all those warnings, and he had a bad history and write-ups in his 8-year history, however long he worked there. He had several write-ups about his conduct.
And did that same thing to someone else several years earlier. He didn't kill them that time. It was a young guy without the health problems. But that same thing, kneeling on him like that too long.
Well,
Sorry.
the chief of police was giving him warnings and stuff. I mean, he was
Yeah.
well aware of Derek Chauvin's behavior. But in the cruiser afterwards, after the whole incident was done, he was sitting talking to the other gentleman on the street, the older man that was really worried about George Floyd and stuff. He said in the cruiser, well, that's a big guy. He must have been on drugs or something. See, so
Yeah,
big guy, he's on drugs.
but see, even that tells me he was definitely afraid then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Of being caught.
Big guy, you know.
Yeah, but he was afraid of being caught.
But to do that in front of cameras and everything, I mean, and not think that's not okay, is something really wrong with you. No
And
matter what the guy was. I mean,
Speaking of ignoring,
and he still kept his knee on his neck, and all the other officers kept it up too. It wasn't just him. There was 2 officers behind him.
Yeah.
Right.
That putting wicked pressure on his legs, on his,
right.
backside. He was face down. He couldn't breathe. It was obvious to everybody. And the cameras were going, and those 3 officers had no regard for that.
And speaking of ignoring,
He had no pulse. And
Yeah.
Right.
there were people trying to help. People saying, let me help. I'm an EMT. There was an EMT on the scene who wanted to help.
And Chauvin was actually
ignoring.
with mace. He took out mace at that point and pointed it at her. Get away. I'm doing this regardless of what you people say.
Right. And what I'm trying to get at is something that Mirko brought up about being ignored. Something possesses somebody to ignore. you know, whether it's this guy that ignored you for 2 weeks.
Or-
There's something behind that. And I think there's something in this chapter that talks about the I'm paraphrasing here, the unfortunate things that happen in our lives. When we go to fear, it really has to do with love.
Right.
And so I'm trying to reconcile, which I'm having a little trouble with articulating, why the guy that I don't want to mention his name,
Oh, sorry, I did.
it's okay.
I thought you'd honestly forgotten. I
Oh
don't like
no, I didn't want
the
to.
former president's name
Yeah,
either.
no, I didn't want to bring his energy anymore into the room. But don't worry about it. And I think about, there must have been fear at some level on those police officers. Now, whether that can be turned around to something to be doing with love, I don't know. And if it is to do with love, I think it was love very misguided. Like love being the big bad guy. I loved, intimidating somebody. I don't know. Go ahead, Mary.
I mean, the love isn't necessarily for the person that they're acting against in the messed up manner. That's the first thing to realize. They're not acting out of a distorted love towards that person necessarily. In this case, I don't think it was any kind of love towards him. So I'm going to go back to the racism thing. And I know this does not apply to everyone in this room the way it does in the US, but like we have that long history of like the big bad black man threatening our white womanhood. And I really think that that kind of energy is at play whenever you have this big black criminal, possibly on drugs. Not in that moment. That's what I'm saying. In that moment, he wasn't a threat. But that's why I think a lot of this it brings up this messed up power dynamic. And then you throw in the lovely messed up power dynamic of the police and their fairly unquestioned power to act in these circumstances, how it's been, the fact, as you say, Kirsten, that they sat there for all those minutes with a camera recording means that they thought that they did not have to worry about consequences.
That the law would be on their side and that was perfectly okay.
Yeah, and that's where it was this confluence of seriously messed up energy. And that's why it has been this flashpoint.
I also think
flashpoint here and across the world. So
can I say a short thing, last thing?
Yes.
For the next time, because my question was because the text, the book says that if you don't love anything, you also don't hate anything, don't fear, etc. But ignoring for me is not hate or not what is the other violence or is really the opposite. Ignoring is the opposite of ignoring. And when Neale has another book that is the God Solution, where he said that the love that we are talking about is not a distorted form of love in the sense, is a distorted form of love in the sense that you are loving another thing so much that you are killing me by loving this other thing. In the case of policeman, he was loving the idea that the other person was an enemy, more that the idea that this person is the problem is the idea. In the case of ignoring you, I'm not ignoring you. I am loving another idea or another person more than you. This is the distorted love. You
Yeah.
are always love something. Also, when you are ignoring something, in reality, you are loving something else.
Right.
So this is, I think this is the lesson of this chapter. The lesson is that we can't love. We are condemned to love all of our lives something. So we have to be careful to what we love. This
I
is
think
my,
that's true. I think
Yeah.
you're right on with that. He loves something more than he probably loved being a police officer and be able to do that to somebody more than the care of George Floyd.
yes,
Right.
yes.
And some
We
of
have
that's
to
And
gang mentality too. The police officer, especially on a black male, those two officers in the back, he was in charge. He was in charge of that whole scene. And
Yes,
none
yes,
of
yes.
those officers are going to speak up against him. He was in charge and they did what he said to do. He said, don't let up on him. They didn't let up on him. You know, that kind
Yeah.
of
Yes, I'm thinking about all what is happening in the world. Now, while you speak, I'm thinking about how much distorted love there is in the world.
Yes, yes, yes,
Is
yes.
it so hard to love when people kill each other, hate each other, I don't know, do all these terrible things? Really, there is a question, where is the love? Where is the pure love? Where
There
the
is the
love?
love
There
of
is
a
little
distorted
love.
idea.
Yes, distorted, very distorted love in
Distorted
all
love.
the world.
Yes.
Oh,
What were you
Okay.
gonna say, Marco? Okay. You
No,
said-
I agree with you because the love is really all there is, but we have to choose what we love. This is the problem, because if we love the power over another person, like the example of the policeman, we are choosing love, but I don't know, it is not the highest form of love. This is simple, probably is a simple statement, but really life is simple if you think about. It's simple. You are simple loving, not the highest form of love. And I think that our culture is based all on teaching. For example, to the policeman, I don't want to say another thing, but I think that military and policemen at the beginning of their belief don't have this very highest idea of love.
Yeah.
They love much more the idea of control,
right.
over another person.
Power.
So we have a big problem because we think that they are protecting us. Probably they are not.
Yeah.
We have a problem.
Anne, did you want to say something real quick?
I think it's a
Whoa,
good
whoa, whoa, whoa,
statement.
whoa. Wait.
Anne. Anne.
Okay.
Anne,
Did you
did
have your
you?
hand up?
Yeah, Anne, did you have your hand up?
And if you
Right.
did, you're muted.
She's muted. I think something's wrong with her connection.
Okay.
There she is.
I
Isn't she
did-
there?
I did read that, sorry, I'm butting in. I did
Sorry,
read that
but
it's a dangerous thing, thing to put, to give insecure people position of power. And going back to Mirko's, give insecure people a position of power, but they're the very people who want to go into the military, and they want the power for instead of, because they're insecure, if you know what I mean. You already only have one leg kind of thing. You feel like you get this power and you can really stand your ground because you've got a whole body of people behind you and you can push it. because you have a lot of things you're angry about. But about Marco's saying about ignored, I still do feel very hurt about being ignored. It makes me feel like I have no value when I'm ignored. You know, say somebody withdraws affection suddenly from you for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That's very hurtful. But then I realized, you know, as a child, I was abandoned a lot. You know, kind of in a fun way. My mother gave me to my sisters, and my sisters dumped me behind a hedge, you know, in a pram, and they went off to play. So I feel more sort of united with the trees and the bushes. And but you know, so that kind of ignoring gives me my feeling, a deep hurt inside of feeling abandoned. But now I realize I got to love myself, take care of myself, and get more power get more unified within myself, and then I'm better news for everybody else.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's it.
I just want to say something because we could go on with this for another half hour at least. I think it was a very good point, Mirko, that you made about, and I think Romy, you touched on this too, that the want of that power supersedes the want for a compassionate reason for wanting to help protect people.
Yeah.
And I'm going to find out if I can find this video that's very short. I'll send it when I send out, if I can find it. I'll send it when I send out the recording. But it's of Thomas Hubel. I don't know if you're familiar with him. But he talks about, I don't have the right words for it, but it's group trauma and how to get through the group trauma. And of course, he uses World War II and Adolf Hitler as an example, because people in Germany, and I have a friend who's from Germany, and actually she lives in Germany. I know it's still some, and she wasn't even alive when this all took place, but there's a trauma, a PTSD even for having it be such a big, a big historical event. And I was gonna say that to Ariana as well, because I could tell by the way she was telling us in 1945, Croatia was on the side of Adolf Hitler, that there is a real thing that people, I think, have to get to. And yes, Mirko.
Annette, I would like to close. I think we are in closing time, but there is a good news for me in all of these discussion. The good news in my experience is that you have the, I repeat the Neale words. When you are ignored, for example, you have the opportunity to demonstrate who you are by, like Jesus said, you can love your enemies. And so you, with this opportunity, I think in my life, it was and is every day a great opportunity to demonstrate that I'm not this, and that not that I am better, but I am, I can love them in spite of the circumstances and their behavior, because I am compassionate. And so I feel good about me, because I really, in this place, I don't It doesn't matter, like the book say, it really doesn't matter what they are doing, if they are ignoring me. The only thing that matter is what these have to do with, with the agenda of my soul.
Right.
Probably the agenda of my soul is to demonstrate compassion. I think this is the good news in all these not good situation.
I also think that on this whole discussion, I think the most important is just what can I learn out of it, or what is the gift in this situation. And if I or if we are able, or if I'm able to pause, to not to act, not to react, just to step back, I think then I have even taken out that much energy of the situation, that even it will also change the life of the other person, the person
This
who
is
ignored.
the gift. This
Yeah.
is the gift. This is
Yeah.
the gift. So we can think that if we can love the policeman, if you arrive at this place in spite of his behavior and killing another man, we have to love the policeman. I think that in this case we have to love him, not to condemn him, but to demonstrate to him that there is another way. So this is the best thing I can do. We can do. We can love him. We don't have to approve him, but we can love him. Come si dice? We can love him in spite of this his behavior. We can love him. I think I can. I think I can.
I think you made a very, very good point. And
Yeah.
we're going to end there. But Mary, would you like to? And I really appreciate everybody's input today. It's been a very powerful chapter and a very powerful discussion, in my humble opinion. But Mary, would you like to close us up real quick?
I just want to say first, if Linda were here, she would bring up that what hurts you so much that you have to hurt someone else question, because
Yes.
that's what it really all comes down to. Also, does anyone else want to do a quick close up instead of me, since I read? Otherwise, I'm happy to do it. Just thought I'd throw it out there if anyone else is feeling the vibe. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you, universe, for bringing us here for this beautiful, beautiful, intense and profound discussion about love and distorted love. And I'm thinking about the image of the mountain water. It's the same with love, right? There is love, pure love. That's what they called it in the God consciousness, right? They talked about pure love. And then the distorted love gets all these other drops of things in it, like fear and jealousy and envy and trauma. So I think our job as we go through our lives, those of us here making up this particular energy of this group, our job is to look at ourselves and see, am I expressing the purest form of love, the highest form of love? And how am I expressing it? Am I expressing it in the highest way? Am I honoring it in the highest way? You know, and we can't be perfect all the time. God knows. And we, you know, when we all, I hope, are gentle with ourselves when we don't hit that high bar. But yeah, I think that's what we've established for today. All of us little divine vessels here can go out into the world and feel our pure form of love and express it in the highest way we can, as much as we can. And even if we feel like we're powerless over a lot of things and people and stuff is happening and there's a lot going on and we can't always do anything. Sometimes we can't do much, but here in our little corner, we can feel the love and express the love, and those ripples will be felt throughout the creation of which we are a part. And that's pretty cool. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Marco and Kirsten and Evelyn and Ann and Mary and Romy and Ariana, who had to leave. I really appreciate all of you, and we will see each other next week. And we'll take it from there. I love you all.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Love you all.
Bye-bye.
You, Bob.
Bye-bye.
Bye.